Wow, you heard that right. Okay, so now we're recording. So those who are gonna watch this in the future, online or whatnot, in the internet, I have Benjamin Glynn today, and those who've seen some of my videos floating around, I've interviewed other people. Okay, so first of all, just to preface all of this, right? None of this information, anything that we say, should be taken as legal advice or medical advice. If you seek any of those, we would recommend that you go to someone who is a legal practitioner and is registered. So don't take any of this as legal or medical advice. Everything is just for entertainment purposes only. Okay, so how I met this guy right here, right, is through a mutual friend. And she said that this is someone she knows, and then he's been making headlines, not exactly headlines, but making some waves and news around Singapore for doing something not conventional in the MRT and being caught with videos and pictures of that. And the local news have done a few articles on him. So Benjamin Glynn, how about we just go into exactly who you are, how long have you been in Singapore, what's your general story that most news outlets don't ask you, so we can get in here since it's long form conversation.
Yeah, hey Stan, I've just been watching your video with David and Santos. So big shoes to fill in terms of following on from those guys. But yeah, been in Singapore since January 2017. So just over about 4.5 years now. I've been working for my company since 2014. I did about 3 years in the UK, transferred with the same firm out to Singapore. And the plan was to be here for the next sort of 10, 15 years until my kids went through the school and would go to university. And then we thought we'll probably move back to the UK then. Firstly, had a great time in Singapore. The people here have been great to us. Both my kids were born here. So my son was born in NUH. My daughter was born in SGH. And yeah, up until March last year, we've had a great time, very happy here. Both of our careers are going well. But we decided at Christmas time, due to the travel restrictions, that we would head back to the UK. And the plan was to leave on the 31st of May. And actually the day that this incident happened on the train where I was recorded was actually my last working day in the office. It was a Friday and I was on my way home by 11 p.m. in the evening. So yeah, that's sort of my background and the situation. In terms of the incident, I was on my way home from Raffles Place. I was waiting for the train and I was talking to an uncle who was probably in his 80s, and he looked like he was struggling to breathe. He had his mask right up over his nose and his eyes were bulging. And I was saying to him, look, uncle, if you can't breathe very well, take your mask down. I helped him onto the train. And then as I got onto the train, I sat him down. A lady on the carriage said to me, oh, leave him alone and put your mask on. And then I had a conversation with her, and that's obviously somebody in between us was videoing it, and then it got put onto Stomp or Facebook or whatever. So yeah, that was the incident.
So March 21st, March, that's your last day that you got videoed. In Singapore, that's what we call sway, Sibei sway.
So it was May, sorry if I said March. So it was May the 7th, I think it was a Friday. That was when I was on the train. And then May the 31st was the day I booked a flight to fly back to the UK. So yeah, just didn't know anything about any of this. And then at midnight on the Saturday, which was the following day, I think the 8th of May, it was my daughter's 5th birthday. We'd just had a party. And actually we had to split the party in two because the rule of 10 went down to rule of 5. So we had to split the Saturday and the Sunday into two separate parties. So we'd had the first part of her double birthday party and I was in bed, and it was just before midnight and the doorbell rang. Woke up the whole family, my wife, our helper, kids. I went to the door, very strange, and there's two young, sort of my age, mid-30s, 40 years old, policemen who wanted to talk to me. So I went out to talk to them, and then they arrested me and took me to the station and at Tanglin, and then yeah, basically showed me this video that had been doing the rounds on social media, and they kept me in the police cells. They let me out at like 4 a.m. on Monday, so I was in for like over 24 hours. So yeah, quite a scary and interesting 28 hours of my life.
There's a lot of events who happen within such a short span, and I mean that was the last day of work, right? It's how unfortunate it has been last day of work where something like that happened. And let's just open that can of worms right there. Let's go straight to the mask. So what essentially happened there was you literally gave another man, another living breathing man of flesh and spirit, basically the permission that he was granted, so to speak, by God to breathe. You were saving someone's life, and as a result, someone...
I wouldn't go that far, but yeah, I was trying to help him because he looked like he wasn't breathing very well. He looked like he was out of breath.
Yeah, let me just open some can of worms here, because it will set a good pace as to where this conversation will lead to. Because, I mean, as we all know right now, the kind of situation we're in right now, most Singaporeans are in how do we say the very politically correct, has been woken up to a few things that they never thought were true, or has been taught differently. So one of the reasons why me and Glenn decided to do this, right, was that some things have to be said, and because the media has painted you in a very different light, and what are some other information before we go into the arresting? What are some other information that you want to get out before we get into your jail time, your jail, facing jail, whatnot?
I mean, just in terms of, do you mean in terms of like the government rules and regulations and acts versus law? In terms, is that what you mean?
Yeah, maybe that for later. But what did the police officers say, and what did they charge you for? What, and then
okay,
yeah, and did they give you good food in the cell? That's the most important thing.
I refused any of their offerings. I just had some water and a cup of tea. Wow. But yeah, I refused all of their kind offerings of food. But yeah, they charged me with not wearing a mask and being a public nuisance. Apparently, having a open conversation is being a public nuisance. I don't quite see it myself. But yeah, they let me out on a $500 bail, and I had to report back in a month's time. I've been back twice now, and they still haven't charged me with anything.
Okay, you know what? Let's fucking go there, man. Lawful versus legal, right there. So, what I've come across so far, right, and again, none of this legal advice, is that some of us have, how do we call it, imperfected securities. But before going absolutely intricate on that, because that requires a lot of explanation. But what did, I mean, your own research as well, right? What you've come across is most of this has been unlawful for you.
Yeah, I believe so. It boils down to the difference between natural law, God's law, and commercial maritime law. So basically law of the land versus law of the sea. So the government is a man-made creation. It's a corporation. It's a commercial entity. So therefore, the only jurisdiction that it will have is over other commercial organizations. So it's maritime law. It's the law of the sea. I, as a living man of flesh and blood, wasn't aware that I was under the jurisdiction of a corporation, so government. So their mask regulation, which comes on the back of an act, doesn't, as far as I'm aware, necessarily apply to the living man. So that's the basis of my defense. And I haven't hired a lawyer. I know quite a lot around this area. I'm representing myself, and my letters to them and my paperwork to them is on this basis. Is your mask regulation, is it unlawful or is it lawful, and does it apply to a living man? And that's the basis of my argument and my defense.
Okay, for those out there, right, who's going to listen to this, have a regular 9 to 5 job, haven't come across surnames like Ike or surnames like Bonacci, would be very startled to know that you can actually represent or present yourself in your own capacity in court or any legal setting. So I've come across a few some information, but what's the progress with your situation now? So these people, they took your passport, right? And how
Yes. Yeah, so they've confiscated my passport. So therefore, I believe that they are trampling on my natural, unalienable right of travel. So we have, as a living man, we have a natural right to live in peace, to be able to travel. So obviously them confiscating my passport means that I couldn't get on my plane with my family on the 31st of May and go back to my home country. So yeah, that's the big issue at the moment. Is I haven't been charged, but they have got my passport, so I'm unable to get into the airport and go home.
You see right there, right? That's exactly the problem. All of the articles I have right now, I search for. I mean, unfortunately, you have not been labeled as sovereign man, which is quite disappointing to me. I thought you would carry that at face well, but I had to specifically search Singapore Benjamin Glynn. Okay, anti-masker faces 6 months in jail for not wearing face mask. Okay, let's
so anti-masker. So I wasn't wearing a mini skirt on that video. So am I an anti-skirter? Like, where does this anti-masker thing come in? I don't understand it.
Yeah, so this is how the news, how they spread it around. Faces 6 months in jail. Okay, that doesn't mean you're going to jail. That means you've been charged with the potential of going to jail, right? And that's how the news.
I haven't been charged, but potentially I could be charged. Yeah.
This is so fucking misconstruing. So this is how they weaponize all these articles as a cudgel for fear. For, I don't know, you can call it control or call it whatever you want. Let's just see where this conversation leads to. But this happens everywhere. I mean, okay, I'm not sure about that sovereign woman thing, right? That happened a few months ago. She probably didn't carry herself very well. Didn't do the right things. But for your case, you're doing everything right. I mean, and the news right here is just, to me, this is not accurate.
So the sovereign woman and myself do have something in common. So she got sectioned with IMH. I believe for a week after the arrest. I also got taken to IMH for questioning after my statement, but I must have said different things to her because they didn't keep me in the IMH for a week afterwards. I managed to kind of talk my way out of not being a mental case, and managed to get them to release me. But yeah, they put her into IMH for a week. I visited IMH in a wheelchair with leather straps around my ankles and on my wrists. It was surreal, and sitting in a wheelchair with 3 police behind me getting into me by a psychiatrist. But yeah, very, very bizarre situation to be in.
Sounds like you are measuring your mental capacity and just looking to frame you in a way where you're not of sound mind.
Yeah. But I kind of asked a lot of questions back to the lady that was assessing me. And yeah, it was quite an interesting conversation.
How did it go?
For the police guys to listen to. No, just asking her what her reasoning was in terms of how much research she had done into viruses, virology, all this kind of thing. So I was kind of questioning what knowledge and what understanding she had, because I've been looking into all this stuff quite heavily for the last 12 months. So I could drop certain doctors' names and things of their work that I've studied, and she'd never heard of any of it. So it was a bit of a pointless conversation, really.
It's quite insane. I mean, for us who truly care about what's really going on, we checked and scoured every single corner of information we can find, and then there's this huge divide. There's this extremely different side of demographics who people who never heard of all these doctors at all. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's the problem, that there's no bridge in between, and then the media doesn't seem like they're doing a bloody good job, to be honest, lah.
Yeah, I mean, the forces that are behind the media are exactly the same forces that are behind the government. So you find with the mainstream media, it's just a propaganda machine, not Singapore I'm talking about everywhere, but it's basically a propaganda machine for the government, and the government and the media is basically controlled by the same forces. So that's how they keep us in control, through fear, through lies and propaganda, basically. But there's a lot of people with what's been happening for the last sort of year or so waking up to this now. And I do feel that there's a great awakening, and a lot of people, such as myself, I was fast asleep 12 months ago. A lot of people are sort of waking up to this now, and I think that the veil has been lifted and they've come out into the open for the first time in history, and they're sprinting to the finish line trying to get the job done. But we are waking up quite a lot as well. So yeah, it's going to be a very interesting next, every month that goes by is getting more and more interesting.
I'm just going to slip this in really quick. Despite having opposition, or you can say, or despite having very different views out there, right? Including my experience, especially what I have experienced, most people who are in the system, right? They're just blur, lah, to be honest. I mean, most of them don't know what the hell they're doing. They're just doing their job. You want to get a job done. You want to go home to their family. So there are really good people left in the system, but most of them just don't know what they're doing. It seems like we have to just follow the money is one thing, but I believe those at the cream of the crop, the top, they don't really need the money. Okay, so that aside for now, you're talking about your experience getting into all of this, because I don't think the media will ask you this, right? How did you jump into all such information?
How do I research the information?
Yeah, no, how do you jump into all of this? Like, how do you get interested in?
Okay, how did I first get into it? It was September last year, and it was the Jeffrey Epstein situation with his flight logs and his island, and all these politicians had been there. And I was just like, what is going on here? And so I spoke to one of my friends on a call who lives in the UK, and I was like, what's going on with this Epstein stuff? It's really weird. And he's like, oh, mate, I've been awake for years, and people are waking up at the moment to it all. And he sent me a few things to watch. I watched the Out of the Shadows documentary as the first thing I kind of saw, and I was like, whoa, what is going on here? And then, yes, the last sort of 10 months or so, I've just been desperately trying to find out what the truth is, because there's so many lies, and it's like the layers of an onion. You've got to peel off kind of 4 or 5 layers to actually get to the truth, because there's a lot of disinformation and misinformation out there in the alternative media. So we call them controlled opposition, or shills. The first 3 months, I spent the whole time listening to all these shills, and then as you get a bit more, I guess, seasoned and understand it a bit better, you realize who the good guys are and who are not so good guys. So yeah, but it was the Epstein stuff that was the one thing that made me question what's going on.
Yeah, a number of things in the world that we cannot unsee, and once you kind of pick up the patterns that how they usually do things, right? We start to see in everything, especially this masking thing. So let's just go to the mask for now. First of all, this masking thing, from what I've come across so far anyway, everything, the mask to so-called jabs, there are no vaccines, by the way. These are not, you can't legally call these vaccines. These are injections, experimental injections. From the mask to injections to even a test, which I had a close shave experience escaping from, quote unquote escaping. All of these are classified as medical experiments. So under the Nuremberg Code, international law, right? For someone to accept one of these medical experiments, there has to be a full conscious consent, and the person has to be awake, and he can reject this experiment at any time. And it's so bloody strange. Everyone out there is just doing it without asking any questions whatsoever. It it feels like some kind of, I don't know, man, mind control or deep waking, deep sleep. It's the strangest thing I've seen in years, to be honest. What the hell is going on, man?
Yeah, I almost feel like if the CDC or Fauci or whatever in the US was to say actually pink masks with yellow spots on work better than blue masks, at least half the population of the world would listen and would okay, we need to buy some pink masks with spots on. That's how brainwashed and programmed and indoctrinated most of the population are. They just don't seem to have the capacity for critical thinking. And yeah, it's bizarre. It's very bizarre.
I think the Fauci was recommending 2 or 3 masks at once, right? Thank God the shit didn't pick on.
Yeah. I mean, I've researched quite a bit around masks, and yeah, I think it's lack of oxygen is a big problem for the brain, and also the bacteria and the hygiene side of things is not good either. A lot of people say, oh, but surgeons wear them, but it's a bit of a different situation. Viruses, if they exist, are tiny and the holes in the mask are very big. So if viruses did exist and you could pass on a pathogen or whatever through sneezing and coughing, the holes in the mask are much bigger than what these apparent viruses are. And the second thing is with a surgeon, it's completely different because you're opening up somebody's body. So if you're having heart surgery, obviously you don't want someone's saliva going directly into somebody's body. So I just think that's a really weak argument that I get quite a lot. Well, surgeons wear them. I don't see the relevance of that argument myself.
I think the size of the holes on the mask is 0.01 or something like that. And then the size of the so-called strain is 0.004 nano, something like that. It's insane how people don't even, okay, you give them the facts, right? And then you tell them exactly this is what is. It's as if they are not listening and they can't process, and then they just retreat back to, oh no, but you have to. I mean, like, haven't you heard what I just said? Like, I mean, why don't you at least consider the facts the provable facts that you can check by yourself? Instead, they retreat back to, oh no, you have to listen to the law. I mean, I guess the law has its place for order and civil discourse, but this seems a bit extreme.
Yeah, and it's not the law. Everyone says that, oh, you're in Singapore, you've got to follow the law. And I'm like, it's technically a regulation. It's a rule, it's a guidance, basically. And if it makes no sense whatsoever, why must I follow a regulation from a commercial being that makes no sense? In fact, it actually damages my health. That's kind of how I think about things. I mean, I had no idea that it was anything other than a fine. So when they talked to me about I didn't know I could get arrested for it because I haven't committed a crime. But once I did get arrested, and I was in my statement, I was talking to the investigation officer, and she was telling me that I could go to jail for up to 6 months and have up to a $10,000 fine. I was just like, jail for not wearing a mask? Am I like, I hadn't been to sleep since Friday, so this was Sunday night. I was hallucinating because my eyes were so tired. But I was like, am I in a parallel universe here? Like, you're going to keep me away from my kids and ruin my life and send me to Changi prison for not wearing a mask? I'm like, to me, it was just like insane. I had no idea that there was a punishment of jail time for something as ridiculous as not wearing a mask.
All for a medical experiment which has not been concluded yet.
Yeah, I won't even go there with what I think about the jab and the virus and stuff. But yeah, it's I mean, it's an inverted world that we live in, but it's like a clown world at the moment. To me, once you open your eyes and you know what's going on, yeah, just clown world, inverted world. It's pretty crazy.
Another thing that we should at least touch upon is, why do you say the law is not the law? Because there are statutes and acts, and then there are lawful procedures and there are legal procedures. So let's roughly go into it. Of course, none of these should be construed as legal advice. If you need any legal advice, we suggest that you look elsewhere. Everything here is entertainment purposes only. So yeah, let's go into it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big difference between legal and lawful, and there's a big difference between lawful and unlawful. So yeah, I'm challenging the fact that my arrest was unlawful, in my opinion, which is something that I'm asking them to clarify. I have also asked them if they had a warrant for my arrest that was signed by a judge, because you can't go to you can't arrest somebody without a warrant if they haven't committed a crime. So that's one area that I'm asking them to clarify. And yeah, I mean, in my opinion, they trespassed. They unlawfully arrested me and they kidnapped me, and they're still kind of kidnapping me now. That's how I feel like. So their crimes are much bigger than mine of breaking a regulation and not wearing a mask. They've trespassed. They've unlawfully arrested me. They've kidnapped me, and I'm being held against my will now because I can't be with my family back and go back to the UK.
Not only that, but they themselves cannot produce any proof of harm, any injured party. They cannot produce any man that has been injured as a result of your actions. There's no, they can't even prove that they own you, the property. I mean, let's leave the person discussion for later, but let's go to how they don't even have any proof and they're doing all these things to you.
So the only place that I would have to wear a mask, as I understand it, is in the workplace, because I have a commercial contract with my employer, which is maritime law. And because of that commercial contract that I have in place with my employer, if they tell me I've got to wear a pink mask with blue spots on it, I do have to do that. They can pretty much tell me
Really?
They can pretty much tell me, if you can hear me, they can pretty much tell me what I have to do, and I have to listen because I've got a commercial contract in place. My company also is licensed, presumably by the Singapore government. So again, the government can pass on a regulation to another commercial entity, i.e. my employer, and then my employer can pass on the regulation to me. So that's the only place, as far as I'm aware, where you have to lawfully, not legally, lawfully wear a mask. So this is what my basis of my defense is.
So the person that has been created, those who don't know, right? We're gonna go into a bit of some specifics here. The person that you're holding right now is not you. It's a legal construct. It's for you to do business in this so-called matrix. It's a person. So because you sign a contract and you are operating in capacity of that person, you have to follow the rules of that domain, which is the maritime law. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually quite straightforward, but I don't want to go into a big sort of legal and unlawful chat. But basically, when you are born, you are a live, living creature, living man or living woman. But then when your parents register your birth and you get a birth certificate, the state will set up a legal fiction, which is your name in capital letters, your family name often in capital letters, and then you become a non-living man or woman. You become a legal fiction, and it's that the government owns. So yeah, but that's probably a conversation for another day. But I'm saying to them, look, I'm a living man. I'm here in front of you. I'm talking. Do you agree that I'm a living man? And if they've got to say yes, and then I'll say, okay, tell me how your regulation applies to me. Here I am waving my hands as a living man, and that's the key thing. They do have some control over my legal fiction. Mm-hmm. So if I was to go into a court and they say, what's your name? And I go, Benjamin Glynn, and my date of birth is, I've gone into their world. But I would just, if they took me to court, I would just say, my name is Benjamin. I wouldn't mention my second name, and I would refuse to join myself to that legal fiction.
And for those who are very unsure, just what the hell are we talking about, right? We can't give everything away. So I think the next best clue is to get people to, I would usually give people to look at the Singapore Penal Code. The first few definitions should be dead giveaway. It says that a man or a woman is da-da-da. And then the next bloody line, it literally bloody says a person is that. So, I mean, if those two things don't get you questioning, I mean, those who are interested, right, I suggest you start from there and ask more questions. Okay, so that aside, right? Yeah.
I mean, the good people to, if people are interested, I learned a lot from people like Romley Stewart, Robert Michael, the Clifford brothers, Dean and Darren, Santos, who you've interviewed before. He's got some videos on YouTube as well. So yeah, you need to understand who you are and your legal, lawful standing in order to be able to defend yourself against something like this.
So
it's very interesting, and it's not that complicated.
It seems like the ultimate sleight of hand, but then again, we are the ones who ran away with the title, so it was a voluntary thing, and I've been thinking about how, like, what solution can we have in light of all these recent events, especially the parents trying to protect the children, and they have just pulled down the consent for children 12 years old. It's fucking insane.
Makes me feel sick. I can't. When they said they were going for the kids that were 12 to 15, and I was just like, what? So yeah,
12 years old, man.
It's not good. But unfortunately, the state owns your children because you gave them away when you registered the birth with the birth certificate. So it's important that you correct your status, and you take control of both your legal fiction and your children's legal fiction as well. And then actually, if you become a living man, living woman, and you can take yourself from being in the public realm into the private realm, you don't actually have to deal with the government anymore, because you can take yourself into the private realm and disassociate yourself with the state. And that's something that when I get back to the UK, the first thing I'm going to do is get an affidavit of status notarized and make sure that I publicly announce that I've taken control of my legal fiction. That's my first most important thing when I get back, is to sort this out.
Yeah, man. I mean, where my process is right now, right, is the very first notary public I went to. She said she's uncomfortable with signing it. It seems like even those who are supposed to do the things supposed to do, they don't know what they're doing. Okay, let's go back to the parents thing. So 12 years old, right? I don't see anything lawful about that. And there are some groups who have taken it upon themselves to protect the children. And I've seen some of the consent forms which the Ministry of Education, or I think it's the Ministry of Health, they sent as well. There's no room to remove consent in their forms.
Wow.
Yeah. Have you seen any of those?
No. I just know that I would never, I would just don't consent and I don't comply. And I'll do the same with the PCR testing. I'd do the same when I get on the plane, I'll refuse to do any of these tests because they're not compulsory. They try to say they're mandatory, but actually that doesn't mean that they're compulsory. It's either voluntary or compulsory. And all of these medical experiments and things that they want to do to you, you don't have to do any of them. So yeah, I just don't consent. I don't comply. I don't really waste my time in reading all the forms and stuff because I know that I would never do any of that.
Okay, this is a very crucial point that you just brought up. The mutual friend that we know, right? She brought up a bloody good point regarding my experience as well, is that you can actually say no. And I feel like that has been absolutely lost, I guess, especially in Singapore, that we have the option to say no. I mean, can you speak a bit on that? No?
Yeah, I mean, as a living man or a living woman, you don't have to contract with anyone that you don't want to contract with. So all of these things that they're trying to force on you are completely. You don't have to get involved if you just say, look, sorry, I don't consent, I don't comply. You don't have to do any of these things. At the end of the day, we, the people, made the government. So we are more powerful than what we think we are. And actually, how can something that we created have so much power over us, the people? That's the thing that people need to realize. We created the government, we control the government, not the other way around. I think a lot of people, maybe not so much in Singapore, but a lot of people in the US, UK, Europe, Australia are starting to realize this and understand that we as a living man or a living woman have a lot more power than what they want us to know.
I think there are many states in the states right in the US right now that lifted their mandatory mask and test mandates, right? Where else?
They didn't do it in the US. There's loads. I think Texas and in Florida, Santos, the guy who the mayor or whatever of Florida, he's dropped all of the court cases and stuff that were related to these emergency regulations due to COVID. They haven't done it because they want to and they're nice. They've done it because people have challenged it and said this is unlawful, and therefore they don't have a leg to stand on. And that's why when the first state dropped the mask rules, I think 20 other states followed almost instantly because they knew that they'd kind of been found out and challenged, and they don't have a leg to stand on, basically.
It seems like people in the US, they know that they can say no. People in Singapore are kind of like, oh, I mean, I've seen this question brought up quite often. I mean, it's not mandatory. Then why is it mandatory? I can say no, man. It's kind of like we have completely lost any form of self-respect and yeah, I guess the only word is self-respect. I can't think of anything else.
So a good example, yesterday, I went to Stanley police station to report for bail. And I refused to either do the trace together or obviously I don't have the token. And the lady was like, you've got to do it, you've got to do it. And I'm like, I'm not doing trace together. I don't have the app on my phone and I refuse to do any of this. So you can either let me through or we can stay out here. Half an hour of basically arguing with this, not arguing, talking to this lady. She was adamant that she would not let me go through security to go and report for bail. So I had to get her to ring the police officer and tell her that I couldn't enter because I don't have the trace together thing. So the police IO investigation officer came out to get me and just said, okay, I'll take you in. So yeah, this is just a crazy situation. But I have this, I can't get in anywhere now because I can't get into cold storage. I can't get into any shopping centers because I don't have I refuse to comply and consent to the trace together. So yeah, basically I can only get in places now where there's no sort of marshal or warden on the door. I have to get all my food and drink from the petrol station because I can't get into cold storage. It's ridiculous.
If you were to if we were to go back in time 30, 40 years ago, right? And then you will have a snapshot of what's really going on now, right? People will find it very, very difficult to believe that Orwell is having a very good smoke right now. You know, it's.
I don't think 30 or 40 years. I think 2 years or 3 years. This is like groups of two. I'm not allowed, when my family was here, not allowed to go out as a family because there's 4 of us. We've got to split into twos. I've been eating my lunch when I go into town. I've been eating my lunch on top of wheelie bins because there's no dining in. So I'm literally having to get a takeout and then stand outside the restaurant and eat off the top of a bin. I'm just like, what is going on? It's clown world. It's just ridiculous. Groups of 2 and eating on bins. Like, what is going on?
Okay, the so-called mainstream defense, they would say, oh, no, because there's a virus and you have to, we have to flatten a curve. I mean, you want to flatten this fucking curve for the next 30 years. I mean, I won't be part of this. I'm telling you, it's just insane, man.
So one of the doctors that I was talking to the psychiatrist about regarding viruses, I said, have you studied or seen any of the work by Dr. Stefan Lanka, who I think is one of the best people on viruses? Nope, never heard of him. So that's the thing. You can have these conversations with people, but when the people in authority are completely fast asleep, there's there's just no point in having these
How are
these debates and conversations.
how are your interactions with the people in the system? I mean, the doctors and the police. I mean, generally okay, right? They're just clueless, right? That ignorance seems to be the issue right now.
I mean, I've never been to a doctor's for probably 5 or 6 years. I can't remember the last time. So I've not had any interactions with doctors as in for me, but I have got friends and friends of friends who are doctors. And I've spoken to them about all this, and they just say, is it peer reviewed? And I'm like, is what peer reviewed? Well, is this peer reviewed? And they just talk about medical like papers all the time that are really technical and complex. And basically they just have this kind of, I think, fairly arrogant attitude whereby if you don't understand all the complicated technical science in this document and it's not peer reviewed by whoever, then they're not interested. And so I just find it's strange having conversations with doctors outside of their sort of, I'm not talking about a doctor as in like they're trying to get me better, but having a conversation in the pub with someone who is a doctor, pointless. I've had 4 or 5 chats with them, and they just sort of dismiss me and they won't look at stuff. So yeah, very strange. I think they're very brainwashed.
I have I have one friend who has a family doctor, and his family doctor basically says, if I were you, I would not take the vaccine. I would tell people to be sure to know what you're doing, because all these is still in trial. Like there's no conclusion. Everything's unconcluded. So you are the guinea pig. You are the one in test until 2023, I think. So there are some good pockets of people out there, but it doesn't seem a lot of them are speaking up, and we're relying, because of that, we're relying on the loudest voice, which is the mainstream media.
Yeah, I think they get their licenses revoked if they do speak out, so they lose their income and they lose their career. So yeah, they're very much held over a barrel, I guess.
How does this compare to the UK?
I've not been back to the UK since 2018, so I've not seen my mum or dad since then. My sisters, I've got nieces and nephews now that I've never met before. And obviously 2018 was before COVID. So I do hear bits and pieces, but it sounds as though it's a lot easier in the UK. There's no trace together, check-in. I think lockdowns or whatever, I think a lot of people just ignore it all. And it's much harder to police because obviously Singapore is quite easy to police with the geography and it being so small. The UK is a big place and the people are a lot wilder and a lot freer. So I think probably for someone like myself, life will be a lot easier for me in the UK than it is here.
People in the UK are standing up, right? I mean, it's quite a contrast to Singapore.
Massive protests. I think almost every Saturday they're doing some sort of march or protesters in the cities. So yeah, I imagine maybe in Singapore, if 0.5% of the population is awake to what's going on, probably it's more like 3 or 4% in the UK, and it's a bigger population. So yeah, I think people are a bit more open to the idea of researching and looking at what's going on in the UK than maybe what they are here.
They have marches very often over there, and they say that the turnout is what, 300, 350, and then you look at the pictures.
Yeah, I've seen some big ones, but I don't think that they report it very much in the news. I get all my stuff like that through my Telegram groups and Twitter and stuff like that. I never see anything in the press about it. I think they try to keep it quite quiet.
It looks more like 300,000 or 30,000 rather than 300. This is outright lying.
Yeah, there's been some pretty big protests, not just in the UK, I think all over many other cities in Europe as well.
What do you think the situation in Singapore is like? I mean, how do you see it getting better? I guess I'm just searching for solutions in the dark, because I guess the word is suppressed, right? I mean, Singapore has always been looking up to Big Brother. There's always been looking up for authority to solve issues and problems. I mean, granted, yeah, there definitely is a place for law, because yeah, there can be crazy people out there, but I don't even know what the solution is, to be honest.
I think you've just got to try to, there are a lot of people here who are awake. I'm getting so much support. So many people have messaged me on LinkedIn and said, thank you so much for standing up for your right to breathe fresh air and stuff. So there is a good core, good nucleus of people here who are awake. And there's obviously a very high level of education / indoctrination, but people are very bright and clever here. So I'm sure people are going to be waking up at a increasing amount here, just as they are in every other country as well.
Okay, about that, right? How would you compare the education of Singapore to the UK? Because you said, I guess it's true that we in Singapore are very educated, and you would slash that with indoctrination as well. But what's the main difference?
I mean, it's difficult for me to say because I've not been educated here, but from what I hear, I think it's a lot of reciting things here. So this is how you do it, and you've got to be able to recite it, and there's no kind of there's not as much maybe creative thought. So maybe a better education system would be to teach people how to think rather than what to think. But that would be my sort of thoughts. But I'm not too sure. I'm not an expert on education. Really.
I see. Right. I mean, I've been educated in Singapore all my life, and I can see traces of what you're saying and here and there. And I think the people are just they're just uninformed about what's really going on right now. And yeah. I'm more concerned about the parents and the children, which they have just irresponsibly given the choice to sign up for the so-called injections at 12 years old. And I mean,
yeah,
I don't know, man.
Sad.
I mean,
it's very sad.
Okay, is there a certain direction you want to take this? If not, I'll just jump into something else.
No, that's great. But yeah, no, just to sort of wrap up, I just want to say I didn't mean to, obviously, for this situation to happen. I didn't mean to cause any offense to anybody. I wasn't being arrogant or trying to stir trouble or anything like that, which is the things that I've been accused of. Singapore people have been great to my family and to myself. We've loved living here. And up until, like I say, last year with all the travel restrictions, we would have been here for hopefully another 15 years or so. But yeah, it's just quite a sad way to leave a very happy part of our life in terms of having this kind of cloud hanging over my head. But I just want to say thank you to all the Singapore people, because we've had a great time here.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Yeah, I think what's important is to give you a platform to say what you really want to say without being censored. So, I mean, if there's anything else you want to say before you forget,
that's fine. And what I would say is that with the media stuff that you touched on at the beginning, it was me that went to the media to try to sort of get my story out there, because the officers told me that it could be 6 to 12 months due to COVID, because there's a backlog of cases before I could even go to court, and then potentially up to 6-month prison sentence. So I'm kind of stuck here for 2 months now, and thinking I'm not going to see my kids for, like, I don't know, 12 months or whatever. It's not a very nice thought. So I thought, how can I take control of this and get my story out there? And it was me, through a friend of mine who did actually put me in touch with the journalist at the Daily Mail. So that was my original sort of story, and then the other guys just copy basically off the source story, which was from the Daily Mail. So I just want to make sure that people kind of are aware that I kind of I prompted that move, and it was a bit out of desperation. I've got no income. And they're telling me that if it goes to court, I might wait up to 12 months. Like, I've got 2 young kids, and I'm in a bit of a desperate situation. So that's what it was all about.
I really hope the best turns out for you, man. And thanks for doing this. I really feel like this is much needed, because it seems like a lot of people are so scared of speaking out. So the more people we get like that, who's willing to say what needs to be said, right, then what I want for this place is for Singapore to really know what's going on. So you have been definitely a huge part of that. So thank you for that. And
accidental, but yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, once this situation got thrust onto me, I thought, okay, what do I do? Do I meekly apologize, grovel, say I'm really sorry, and then try to sort of escape with the smallest punishment that they want to give me? Or do I say, hang on a minute, I've not hurt anybody, I've not harmed anybody, this mask rule is nonsense, the virus is debatable. I'm not just going to go quietly here. I'm going to stand up for myself and fight for my rights. So basically, that's what I did. I didn't want to be in this situation, but once this was forced on me, this is how I feel is the way that I should try to deal with it.
Okay, thank you for that. And I guess that's basically it. And I mean, should we even leave an option for people to contact you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite vocal on LinkedIn. I work in recruitment. I've got like 15,000 connections and followers on there. So if people want to drop me a note on LinkedIn, I've had so many people contacting me in this last week. 90% of it positive, 10% of it calling me a dickhead. But yeah, if anyone wants to connect with me, just send me a connection request on my LinkedIn.
Okay, thanks, Ben. I'll definitely speak to you again, and stay strong and hope for the best with your legal situation.
Yeah, hopefully the next one will be me based in the UK, 7 hours behind you, and we can have a chat and I can tell you if I manage to get on a plane and fly without doing the PCR, because that's my next challenge if I get through this one.
Okay, thanks for that. And that's basically it.
Cool. Cheers, Stan. Take care. Bye.
See you, man.